My son took me to a local pub for a beer, and 20 minutes later, I was climbing out of a bathroom window to save my life. I came to visit my son Bradley because he said he needed fatherly advice, but the moment he walked toward the restroom, leaving me alone with a fresh pint, the bartender grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron hard, and his eyes were terrified. "Do not drink," that he whispered. "Don't look back, just listen to me. Your son just sold you to an illegal nursing home. There are 2 men waiting at the back door with a straitjacket. Run." 5 minutes later, I was sprinting down a dirty alleyway while my son signed my life away. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to cut a toxic family member out of your life. My name is Harold King. I am 72 years old, and for the last 10 years, I have let my family believe I am just a confused old man living on a pension. I wear worn-out cardigans. I drive a dented Ford. I pretend to forget where I put my reading glasses. They think I am harmless. They think I am senile. They have no idea that for 30 years, I was the lead forensic accountant for a global firm. I spent my career hunting down embezzlers, fraudsters, and corporate thieves. I know how to spot a lie in a spreadsheet from a mile away. But I never thought I would have to use those skills to hunt down my own son. It started at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar 3 blocks from Bradley's office. The air smelled of stale hops and sawdust. Bradley sat across from me in a booth, his leg bouncing up and down like a piston. He looked terrible. His suit was expensive but wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. He checked his watch 3 times in 2 minutes. "Dad, you should drink your beer," he said, pushing the glass toward me. "It is a special craft brew. I ordered it just for you." I looked at the beer. The foam was thick and settled. I looked at my son. He was sweating even though the pub was freezing. "I am just going to use the head," he said, standing up abruptly. "Drink up, Dad. I will be right back." He walked away too fast. He did not look at me. That was the first red flag. Bradley never paid for anything if he could avoid it, yet he had insisted on this round. I reached for the glass, but before my fingers touched the handle, a hand clamped over my wrist. It was the bartender, a young man named Jack. I knew Jack. 3 years ago, I helped him fix a tax error that would have bankrupted his mother. He looked at me with an intensity that froze my blood. "Harry, do not touch that drink." I frowned. "Jack, what is going on?" Jack leaned over the bar, pretending to wipe down the counter. His voice was a low hiss. "I heard them, Harry. Your son and 2 guys in the back. They are not nurses. They are thugs. Your son paid them $5,000 to take you out the back exit. They have a van waiting in the alley. They said something about an involuntary commitment order. They are coming in 2 minutes." My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained stone cold. My training took over. Panic is a luxury I could not afford. "Why would he do that?" I asked quietly. Jack glanced at the back door. "I heard him say he needs you incapacitated by tonight, so he can sign some real estate papers tomorrow morning. He said you are losing your mind, and you are a danger to yourself. Harry, you have to go, now. Not the front door, they might see you. Use the bathroom window." I did not ask another question. I slid a $100 bill onto the counter under a coaster. "Thank you, Jack." I stood up and walked toward the bathroom. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was racing. I locked the bathroom door behind me. It was a small room with graffiti on the walls and a single small window high up near the ceiling. I could hear heavy boots approaching the hallway outside. I stepped onto the toilet seat. My joints protested. "I am 72, not 22. I pushed the window. It was stuck. I gritted my teeth and slammed the heel of my hand against the frame. It gave way with a screech of rusted metal. I pulled myself up, hearing the doorknob jiggle behind me. "Mr. King," a deep voice called out from the other side. "Open the door. We are here to help you. Help me." They were here to erase me. I squeezed my shoulders through the opening. I tumbled out head first, landing on a pile of damp cardboard boxes in the alleyway. I rolled to my feet, ignoring the sharp pain in my knee. I scrambled behind a large metal dumpster just as the back door of the pub burst open. I peeked through the gap between the dumpster and the brick wall. Two men stepped out. They were massive, wearing white scrubs that looked 2 sizes too small. One of them held a canvas straitjacket. The other held a syringe. Bradley followed them out. He was pacing, running his hands through his thinning hair. "Where is he?" he hissed. "You said you had the back covered." "He must have gone out the window." One of the thugs grunted, looking up at the open vent. "He drank the beer," Bradley said, his voice rising in panic. "It had enough sedatives to knock out a horse. He cannot get far. Find him. I need that doctor to certify him tonight. If I do not have his power of attorney by tomorrow morning, the loan sharks are going to break my legs." I pressed my back against the cold brick wall. Loan sharks. So that was it. Bradley was not just a bad businessman. He was a gambler. I had suspected it for months, but seeing the desperation in his eyes confirmed it. "Find him," Bradley screamed. "I have a buyer coming for the house at 9 a.m. I need him declared incompetent so I can sign the deed." The house. He was talking about my home in Seattle, a 4-bedroom craftsman I bought in the 90s. I had always told Bradley it was a money pit, an old shack worth maybe $400,000. I lied. That house sits on land that has skyrocketed in value. It is currently appraised at $2.5 million. I kept the real value hidden because I wanted to protect him from his own greed. Clearly, I failed. The 2 thugs started walking down the alley toward the main street. Bradley ran to his car, a black luxury sedan, parked illegally by a fire hydrant. He was making a call. I waited until the thugs turned the corner, then I stepped out from the shadows. I did not call the police. Not yet. The police would ask questions. They would look at a terrified old man and a son in a suit, and they might believe the son. I needed proof. I needed undeniable concrete evidence. I pulled my cap down low over my eyes and walked to the curb. A black taxi was idling nearby. I opened the door and slid in. "Follow that black sedan," I told the driver, my voice steady, "and do not get too close." The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror, seeing my dirty coat and the smudge of grease on my cheek. "You got cash, Pop?" I pulled a roll of bills from my pocket. I always carry cash. It is a habit from my days investigating money laundering. Electronic trails get you killed. Cash keeps you invisible. "Drive," I said. We followed Bradley for 20 minutes. He drove erratically, running 2 red lights. He was panicking. Good. Panic makes people make mistakes. I expected him to drive to my house or to his own place in the suburbs. Instead, he pulled into the underground garage of a high-rise apartment complex in the downtown district. The Sterling Heights. This was expensive real estate. Rents here started at $5,000 a month. I had the taxi drop me off a block away. I waited until Bradley disappeared into the lobby, then I approached the building. I knew I couldn't get past the doorman. I walked around to the side alley. The fire escape ladder was raised, but there was a stack of crates against the wall. I looked up. I am an old man, but I keep myself fit. I walk 5 miles a day. I swim 3 times a week. I climbed the crates and jumped, grabbing the bottom rung of the ladder. My shoulders screamed in protest, but I pulled myself up. I climbed. 1 floor, 2 floors, 3. I saw lights on in a corner unit on the 3rd floor. I saw Bradley pacing inside. I climbed until I was level with the window. It was open a crack to let in the cool evening air. I crouched on the metal grating, pressing myself into the shadows. Inside the apartment was furnished with white leather and chrome. Very modern, very cold. A woman walked into the room. It was not Vanessa, his wife. It was Monica, his executive assistant. I recognized her from the company Christmas party 2 years ago. She was 25 years younger than him and wore clothes that cost more than Bradley's car payments. "Did you get it done?" Monica asked, handing him a glass of scotch. "No," Bradley yelled, throwing his jacket onto the couch. The old man vanished. He slipped out a bathroom window. "The guys are looking for him, but if he goes to the cops, we are finished." Monica laughed. It was a cruel sound. "He won't go to the cops. He is confused, remember? That is the narrative. If he shows up anywhere, we just say the dementia is getting worse." He wandered off. "We are the worried family." Bradley downed the drink in one gulp. "I owe $500,000, Monica. If I do not sell his house this week, I am dead. Literally dead. And Vanessa is breathing down my neck about the inheritance." Monica walked over to a desk and picked up a manila folder. "Speaking of your charming wife, she has been busy." "What do you mean?" Bradley asked. Monica tossed the folder onto the coffee table. "While you were playing tag with your dad at the pub, Vanessa logged into his retirement account. She guessed the password. It was your birthday. How original." Bradley froze. "And?" "She drained it," Monica said. $50,000. Transferred to an offshore shell company this afternoon. She texted me an hour ago pretending to be your mother, asking if the transfer went through. She is trying to cut you out, Bradley. She is going to take the cash and leave you with the debt." I crouched outside the window, feeling a cold rage settle in my stomach. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. The woman who brought me casseroles and called me dad. She wasn't just complicit, she was running her own scam. She had stolen $50,000 from me today. $50,000 was a lot of money to most people. To me, it was the bait account. I kept a small checking account active with a predictable password just to see if anyone would ever try to touch it. The real money, the millions from my years as a partner in the firm and my early investments in tech stocks, was hidden behind layers of encryption and trusts that neither of them even knew existed. Bradley kicked the coffee table, sending a vase crashing to the floor. "That witch. She is stealing my money." "It is your father's money," Monica corrected him dryly. "But yes, if she took the cash, she is planning to run. You need to focus, Bradley. Forget the 50 grand. The house is the big prize, 2.5 million. We sell it quick for 1.5 cash to that developer, and we are in the Bahamas by next week. We just need the old man's signature or a death certificate," Monica said, lighting a cigarette. "Don't say that," Bradley snapped. "I don't want to kill him. I just want him gone. Committed. Out of the way." Monica blew smoke toward the ceiling. "If he is wandering the streets tonight, he might have an accident. It would solve all your problems. No doctors, no lawyers. Just a grieving son and a massive inheritance." I had heard enough. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the hunt. They thought I was a helpless sheep. They thought I was prey. I climbed down the fire escape, my movements silent and precise. My knee throbbed, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. They wanted a war. I would give them a war. I walked to the main street and hailed another cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. "My house," I said. "But take the back roads." I needed to get to my house before they did. I needed my ledger. For 5 years, I had tracked every suspicious withdrawal, every lie, every inconsistency in Bradley's life. I kept it all in a black notebook, hidden in a place they would never look. It wasn't just a diary. It was a dossier. It contained the account numbers of his bookies, the dates of his affairs, and the evidence of his embezzlement from his own company. I arrived at my street 20 minutes later. I had the taxi drop me off 2 houses down. I walked through my neighbor's yard, keeping low by the hedges. My house was dark. But as I crept closer, I saw a real estate sign pounded into my front lawn. For sale by owner, cash only. They hadn't even waited for me to be committed. I went to the front door. I slid my key into the lock. It didn't turn. They had changed the locks. My own son had locked me out of the home I bought 40 years ago. I went to the side of the house. There was a loose ventilation grate near the foundation that led into the crawl space. I used to use it to run speaker wires. I pulled the grate loose. It was a tight squeeze, tighter than the bathroom window. I dragged myself into the darkness under my house. The smell of damp earth and old wood filled my nose. I crawled on my elbows and knees, navigating by memory, until I was directly under the floorboards of the master bedroom closet. There was a loose panel here. I pushed up. It shifted. I climbed up into my closet, pushing aside my hanging winter coats. I stepped into my bedroom. The room had been ransacked. My drawers were pulled out. My mattress was overturned. The wall safe, which I kept behind a painting of a ship, was open and empty. I smiled in the dark. They had taken the decoy cash box from the safe. Maybe $2,000 in bills. They thought they had won. I walked out of the bedroom and down the hall to the small utility room, where I kept my old golden retriever's kennel. Buster had died 5 years ago, but I never threw the kennel away. It sat in the corner covered in a blanket. I lifted the plastic bedding inside the kennel. I pried up the false bottom I had installed myself. There it was, the black ledger, and next to it a small encrypted USB drive. I grabbed them and tucked them into the inside pocket of my coat. Suddenly I heard the sound of a key in the front door lock. The new lock. I froze. "You sure he isn't here?" a female voice hissed. It was Vanessa. "He is gone," Van Bradley said. "The police are looking for him. Come on, we need to find that deed. If the safe was empty, he must have hidden it somewhere else." They walked into the living room. I was trapped in the utility room at the end of the hall. There was no back exit from here. I heard the click of high heels on the hardwood floor coming closer. "I am checking the back rooms," Vanessa said. "Start tearing apart the library." She was coming down the hall. I looked around desperately. There was a laundry chute in the wall. It was small, designed for clothes, not people. But it led to the basement, and the basement had a bulkhead door to the yard. I opened the chute. I shoved my legs in. I exhaled all the air from my lungs and let gravity take me. I slid down the metal tunnel, picking up speed, landing hard in a pile of dirty towels in the basement laundry basket. I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. Upstairs, I heard footsteps stop right above me. "Did you hear that?" Vanessa called out. "Hear what Bradley yelled from the library?" A thud, like something falling. "Probably just the house settling," Bradley shouted back. "Keep looking." I rolled out of the basket. I moved to the bulkhead doors. I pushed the locking bar up. It groaned. I froze, waiting for them to hear. Nothing. I pushed the doors open and climbed out into the cool night air of my backyard. I ran for the fence, hopping over it into the neighbor's yard just as the kitchen lights flickered on behind me. I was safe. But I was homeless. I had no access to my primary bank accounts because Vanessa had the cards. My son was hunting me with thugs. My daughter-in-law was stealing my retirement. I walked for an hour until I reached a motel on the outskirts of town. The sign buzzed and flickered. No vacancy. But I knew how to talk to people. I put $200 on the counter, and the night manager found me a room. I sat on the lumpy bed and took out my old flip phone. I didn't use a smartphone. Too easy to track. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang 3 times. "Hello," a voice answered. Rough, gravelly. "Blackwood," I said. "It is Harry, the auditor." There was a long silence. "Harry, I thought you were retired. Or dead." "Not yet," I said. "But my family is trying their best. I need to activate the Doomsday Protocol." Blackwood let out a low whistle. "All of it. All of it," I said. "Freeze the trust funds, lock the offshore accounts, and get a team ready. I am going to sue them. I am going to prosecute them. and then I am going to destroy them. I hung up the phone. I lay back on the pillow, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. They wanted to play games. They wanted to treat me like a senile old fool. Tomorrow they were going to meet the man who took down the Enron executives. Tomorrow they were going to meet their worst nightmare. My eyes felt heavy, but my mind was sharpening like a blade. I had the ledger. I had the lawyer. Now I just needed to set the trap. But first, I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. I needed to know about Dr. Thorne, the doctor Bradley mentioned, who was willing to sign a fake mental health certificate. I woke up at 6 a.m. I washed my face with cold water. I looked in the mirror. The fear was gone. In its place was cold calculation. I put on a pair of janitor coveralls I had stolen from a supply closet during a previous investigation years ago. I kept them in my go bag, which I had stashed in the trunk of my car, parked at a long-term storage facility 3 miles away. I walked there, retrieved the car, and drove to the hospital where Dr. Thorne practiced. I didn't walk in the front door. I waited by the loading dock. When a laundry delivery truck arrived, I walked in right behind it, carrying a clipboard I found in my trunk. Confidence is the best camouflage. I navigated the corridors until I found Dr. Thorne's office. The sign on the door said Dr. Marcus Thorne, Geriatric Psychiatry. The reception desk was empty. It was 7 a.m. The staff hadn't arrived yet. The door was locked. I pulled a set of lockpicks from my pocket. Another skill from a lifetime of auditing corrupt companies. 10 seconds later, I was inside. I went straight to his computer. It was password protected. Amateur. I looked under his keyboard. There was a sticky note. Password WAR23. I logged in. I searched for my name. King Harold. There it was. A file created 2 days ago. Diagnosis: advanced dementia. Paranoia. Violent tendencies. Recommendation: immediate involuntary commitment to Shady Pines Care Facility. Shady Pines. I knew that place. It was a hellhole. A warehouse for the unwanted elderly, where they sedated you until you stopped breathing. I scrolled down. There was an email attached to the file. From Bradley King. Subject: payment. Body transfer sent. $10K now. $10K when the cert is signed. Make sure he never gets out. I pulled out my USB drive. I copied the file. I copied the emails. Then I did something else. I opened the document and edited the diagnosis. I changed advanced dementia to patient exhibits high cognitive function. Family shows signs of coercion and financial abuse. Recommend police investigation. I saved it. I printed a copy and folded it into my pocket. Then I changed the password on his computer to "I know what you did." I slipped out of the office just as the elevator dinged down the hall. Phase 1 was complete. I had the evidence of the fraudulent medical diagnosis. Now I needed to turn Vanessa and Bradley against each other. I sat in a diner across the street ordering black coffee and toast. I watched Bradley pull up to the hospital entrance in his black sedan. He looked frantic. He ran inside. 5 minutes later, he ran back out screaming into his phone. He was calling the thugs. Or Vanessa. It didn't matter. I took out a burner phone I had bought at a gas station. I sent a text message to Vanessa. Bradley is cutting you out. He knows about the $50K. He is meeting a lawyer at noon to divorce you and keep the house money. Check his glove box. I didn't know if he was meeting a lawyer, but I knew paranoia would do the rest. Then I texted Bradley. I saw Vanessa with the loan shark. She paid him $50K to leave her alone, but she told him where you live. Run. I took a bite of my toast. The game had begun. I watched Bradley speed away from the hospital. He was sweating. He was terrified. Good. Now it was time to visit the bank. Not to withdraw money, but to close the trap. I drove to the main branch of First National. I asked to see the manager, Mr. Henderson. He was an old friend. "Harry," he said, shaking my hand, "you look intense." "I need a favor, Jim," I said. "My son is going to come in here today trying to access my accounts. He might have a power of attorney. It is a forgery." Jim nodded. "I will flag the accounts." "No," I said. "Do not flag them. Let him think he has access. But set the transfer limit to 0, and when he tries to move money, trigger a silent alarm for fraud. But tell him it is a system error. Tell him he needs to come back tomorrow." Jim raised an eyebrow. "You are playing with him." "I am teaching him a lesson," I said. I left the bank and drove to the Shady Pines facility. I parked across the street. It was a gray, depressing building with barred windows. I saw a delivery van pull up. It was the same van the thugs had at the pub. I took photos. I zoomed in on their faces. I recorded the license plate. My phone buzzed. It was Blackwood. "I got the court order," Blackwood said. "We have an emergency hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. If you don't show up, they win by default." "I will be there," I said. "Harry," Blackwood warned, "they are going to try to stop you from entering the courthouse. If they catch you before you get into that room, they can commit you with the paperwork they have." "Let them try," I said. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up the final piece of the puzzle. I went to a print shop. I printed out copies of the ledger pages showing Bradley's theft. I printed the emails from the doctor. I printed the bank transfer records from Vanessa. I put them all in a nice leather briefcase. Then I went to a barber shop. I got a shave. I got a haircut. I went to a department store and bought a 3-piece charcoal suit, a crisp white shirt, a silk tie. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the confused old man anymore. I saw the auditor, the man who made CEOs tremble. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse an hour early. I entered through the service entrance Blackwood had left open for me. I waited in the clerk's office, drinking coffee. At 1:55 p.m., I walked toward courtroom 4B. I saw them in the hallway. Bradley, Vanessa, their lawyer a slimeball named Finkel, and Dr. Thorne. They were smiling. They were high-fiving. "It's in the bag," I heard Bradley say. "He isn't here. The judge will grant the order in 5 minutes." "And then we sell the house," Vanessa said, adjusting her dress. "And then we put him in the home," Dr. Thorne added. I stepped out from behind the pillar. "Hello, son," I said. My voice echoed in the marble hallway. They spun around. Their jaws dropped. Bradley looked at me. He looked at my suit. He looked at my clear, sharp eyes. "Dad," he stammered. You're okay. We were so worried." He started to walk toward me, opening his arms for a hug. I knew what he was doing. He was trying to get close enough to restrain me to whisper threats. I held up a hand. "Don't come any closer, Bradley." "Dad, you're confused," he said, his smile wavering. "Dr. Thorne is here to help you." "Dr. Thorne is going to lose his license," I said loudly. A few lawyers nearby stopped to listen. "And you are going to lose everything." Bradley's face turned red. "Grab him," he hissed to the thugs who were standing disguised as security guards near the exit. The thugs moved forward. "I wouldn't do that," a voice boomed. Blackwood stepped out of the courtroom. He was flanked by 2 actual sheriff's deputies. "Mr. King is under the protection of the court," Blackwood said. "And we have submitted evidence of criminal conspiracy into the record 10 minutes ago." Bradley stopped. He looked at Vanessa. She looked ready to vomit. "Shall we go inside?" I asked, gesturing to the door. The hearing lasted 20 minutes. The judge looked at the fake medical report. He looked at the real one I had gotten from a specialist that morning. He looked at the emails I hacked. He looked at Bradley. "Mr. King," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "this is the most egregious attempt at elder fraud I have ever seen. But Your Honor, Finkel tried to argue, my client was acting out of love. Love, I interrupted. I opened my briefcase. I pulled out the ledger. This is a record of $500,000 embezzled from his own company. This is a record of $50,000 stolen from me by her. I pointed at Vanessa. And this is a recording of them plotting to kill me if the nursing home didn't work fast enough. I played the audio from the apartment fire escape. The courtroom was silent. The judge slammed his gavel. Petition denied. And deputies, please take Mr. Bradley King and Mrs. Vanessa King into custody, pending charges. Bradley screamed as the cuffs went on. Dad, Dad, please, I'm sorry. It was the debt. They were going to kill me. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I looked him in the eye. You made your choice, son. You chose money over family. Dad, he wailed as they dragged him out. I'm your son. No, I said softly. My son died a long time ago. You are just a thief. Vanessa tried to run, but the deputies caught her at the door. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. Jack, the bartender, was waiting by the curb in his car. How did it go, boss? He asked. It is done, I said, getting in. Where to? The orphanage, I said. I have a $2.5 million house to donate. And then, take me to a beer. A safe one this time. I looked out the window as we drove away. I was alone. But I was free. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking ahead. I stood in the shadows of the oak tree across the street and stared at my house. It was dark, but the street lamp illuminated a jagged wooden sign pounded into my manicured lawn. For sale by owner. Cash offers only. Immediate possession. My stomach churned with a cold, hard rage. Bradley had not even waited for the ink to dry on the involuntary commitment papers before putting my life up for auction. He was selling my memories to the highest bidder to cover his gambling debts. I walked up the driveway, keeping low. I slid my key into the front door lock. It refused to turn. The metal grated against new tumblers. They had changed the locks. My own son had locked me out of the home I paid for with blood and sweat. I did not panic. Panic is for amateurs. I walked to the north side of the house where the hydrangeas grew thick and wild. Behind the bushes there was a ventilation grate. I installed it myself 20 years ago when I retrofitted the house with a high-end security system. I knew the alarm sensors were only on the windows and doors. They never thought to censor the crawl space. I pulled a multi-tool from my pocket and unscrewed the 4 rusted bolts. The grate came loose with a groan of metal. The hole was small. A tight squeeze for a younger man, let alone a 72-year-old with a bad knee. But adrenaline is a powerful painkiller. I slid into the darkness, feet first. The smell hit me instantly. Damp earth, old wood, the scent of a house's bones. I crawled on my elbows, dragging my body through the dust and cobwebs. It was a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for my shoulders. I could feel the weight of the house above me pressing down. I navigated by memory, counting the floor joists until I reached the spot directly beneath the master bedroom closet. There was a maintenance hatch here. I pushed up. It resisted. I gritted my teeth and shoved harder, putting my back into it. The wood gave way with a sharp crack. I climbed up into the closet, pushing aside my winter coats. I stepped out into the bedroom and stopped. It was a war zone. My dresser drawers were pulled out and dumped on the floor. My mattress was slashed open, stuffing spilling out like guts. The painting of the ship on the far wall had been ripped down, and the wall safe behind it was wide open. It was empty. I allowed myself a small, grim smile. I kept $2,000 in that safe as a decoy. They had taken the bait. They thought they had cleaned me out. They thought the old man kept his fortune in a wall safe like a character in a bad movie. I stepped over the debris of my life. Photos of my late wife were shattered on the floor. I did not stop to pick them up. Sentimentality would get me killed tonight. I needed the weapon. I walked down the hallway to the mudroom at the back of the house. This was the one room they had ignored. It was cluttered with old boots, gardening tools, and in the corner, a large dusty dog kennel. Buster, my golden retriever. He died 5 years ago, but I never had the heart to throw his bed away. To anyone else, it was just a sad reminder of a dead pet. To me, it was the only secure bank vault in the city. I knelt beside the plastic kennel. My knees cracked. I reached inside and pulled up the tartan blanket. Beneath it was the plastic floor of the cage. I took my knife and pried up the edge. It popped open, revealing a false bottom I had constructed from plywood and soundproofing foam. Lying there in the dark was a black leather-bound notebook and a silver encrypted USB drive. I picked up the notebook. The ledger. For 5 years I had tracked Bradley. I started when I noticed small irregularities in the company accounts he managed. I applied the same forensic auditing techniques I used to take down corrupt CEOs. I tracked every wire transfer, every cash withdrawal, every suspicious expense. This book contained the dates and times of his meetings with illegal bookies. It had the account numbers of the shell companies he used to siphon money. It documented the forged signatures on company checks. I had watched him steal. I had watched him lie. I had waited, hoping he would stop, hoping he would come to me and ask for help. But he never did. He just got greedier, and now he had tried to erase me. I slipped the ledger into the inside pocket of my jacket. It felt heavy against my ribs. This was not just evidence. It was a nuclear bomb. This book would send him to prison for 20 years. I took the USB drive. It contained the digital backups and the audio recordings of his phone calls I had intercepted over the years. I buttoned my jacket. I had what I came for. Suddenly I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway outside. Headlights swept across the living room window. A car door slammed, then another. I heard the front door handle jiggle, then the sound of a key sliding into the lock. I did not find the cash, the male voice hissed. It was the thug from the nursing home. Keep looking. Bradley's voice replied. He has cash hidden somewhere. He always carries thousands. Tear the walls down if you have to, and find the deed. If I do not have the physical deed, the buyer might back out. They were in the house. I was trapped in the mudroom. There was no back door here, only a window that was painted shut. The hallway was the only way out, and they were blocking it. I heard their heavy footsteps on the hardwood moving toward the kitchen. They were getting closer. I looked around the small room. My eyes landed on the laundry chute. It was a narrow metal tunnel built in the 50s designed to drop clothes into the basement laundry basket. It was tight, dangerous, but it was the only way down. I opened the small door of the chute. I could hear Bradley in the kitchen throwing plates to the floor. "Where is it?" he screamed. "Where is the money, old man?" I took a deep breath and shoved my legs into the chute. I crossed my arms over my chest and let go. I slid down into the darkness, the metal seams tearing at my jacket. I picked up speed, plummeting 10 feet into the basement. I landed hard in a pile of dirty linens I had neglected to wash. The impact knocked the wind out of me, but the clothes broke my fall. I rolled out of the basket onto the cold concrete floor of the basement. Above me, I heard the footsteps stop. "Did you hear that?" the thug asked. "Basement," Bradley said. "Check it." I scrambled to my feet. I knew this basement better than I knew my own face. I moved silently through the dark, past the furnace and the stacks of old newspapers to the bulkhead doors. I pushed the locking bar up. It was stiff with rust. I shoved it hard. It clanked loudly. "He is down here!" the thug yelled. I threw the doors open and climbed out into the cool night air of the backyard. I did not look back. I ran for the fence, my lungs burning, my legs pumping with a strength born of pure survival instinct. I vaulted over the wooden fence into the neighbor's yard just as the basement light flickered on behind me, flooding the yard with yellow light. I heard shouting, but I was already gone, disappearing into the shadows of the alleyway, clutching the book that would end my son's life as he knew it. I was a ghost now, and ghosts are very hard to kill. I had circled back to the house for one reason, and one reason only: my passport. I could live without my clothes. I could live without my car. But if I was going to disappear, I needed my identity. I had climbed back through the laundry chute and made it to the guest bedroom, where I kept a go-bag stitched into the lining of an old armchair. I had the bag in my hand when I saw the headlights sweep across the ceiling. I froze. A car door slammed, then another. I heard the front door code being punched in. They had the code. That meant Vanessa was here. I dove into the cedar closet in the hallway, pulling the Louvre doors shut just as the front door swung open. I pressed myself into the corner behind a rack of winter coats that smelled of lavender and mothballs. My heart was a jackhammer against my ribs. I had faced cartel accountants and corrupt CEOs who wanted me dead, but hiding in my own hallway from my daughter-in-law was a different kind of terror. Lights flickered on in the hallway. I peeked through the slats of the door. Vanessa walked in. She was wearing a trench coat, and her face was flushed with adrenaline. Behind her was a man I did not recognize. He was tall, slick, with gelled hair, and wearing a suit that was too shiny to be respectable. He carried a laser measuring tool. Quickly, Vanessa hissed, "We do not have much time. Bradley is still chasing the old man's ghost downtown. We need a valuation tonight so we can list it on the private market by dawn." The man whistled as he looked around the hallway. "Nice crown molding. Original hardwood. I can move this fast, Vanessa. I have a buyer in Hong Kong who pays cash for American real estate." No questions asked. 1.5 million. "Do it," Vanessa said, walking toward the kitchen. "Just get the paperwork ready. I need that money wired to the Cayman account by Friday." She pulled her phone out of her pocket. It rang once. "Bradley," she said, putting it on speaker. Her voice changed instantly. It became sweet, concerned, terrified. "Honey, did you find him?" I held my breath. I pulled my own phone out and hit record. No, Bradley's voice crackled through the speaker. "He vanished, Van. The thugs lost him in the alley. But we found his car at the storage unit. He is on foot." Vanessa rolled her eyes at the man in the shiny suit. "Oh my God, Bradley! He is 72 and senile. How could you lose him? Listen to me." The doctor called. "He has the syringe ready. When you find him, do not hesitate. Tell the doctor to give him the maximum dose. I do not want him waking up before the competency hearing on Friday. I want him drooling and incoherent when the judge sees him." I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. She did not just want me committed. She wanted me lobotomized. She wanted to erase my mind chemically to ensure her payday. "I know," Bradley snapped. "I am handling it. Just make sure the house is ready to sell." "I am staging it now," Vanessa lied. "Go find your father." She hung up the phone and let out a long, cruel laugh. The man in the suit walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. He kissed her neck. "Your husband sounds stressed, baby." "He is a moron," Vanessa said, leaning back into him. "He thinks this is about paying off his gambling debts. He thinks we are selling the house to save his kneecaps from the loan sharks." The man laughed. "And what are we actually doing?" Vanessa turned around and kissed him on the mouth. It was a hungry, greedy kiss. "We are taking the 1.5 million and we are disappearing, Greg. By the time Bradley realizes the account is empty, we will be in Rio. Let the loan sharks break his legs. Let the old man rot in the state asylum. I am done with the King family." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. It was not just greed. It was a double cross. Vanessa was playing everyone. She was the architect of this entire nightmare. Bradley was just a pawn, a useful idiot she was using to do the dirty work before she discarded him like trash. I had to get this on tape. I needed her to say it clearly. "So you are really going to leave him?" the man named Greg asked. He pulled away and started measuring the living room dimensions with his laser. "Leave him," Vanessa scoffed. "I left him years ago, Greg. I have just been waiting for the old man to die. But he is too stubborn. He is too healthy. So we had to accelerate the timeline. Once I get that wire transfer, Bradley can rot in prison for elder abuse for all I care. I forged his signature on the doctor's retainer anyway. If the cops come looking, they will find his name on everything, not mine." Gotcha. I had it. The confession, the conspiracy, the infidelity. It was all there, recorded in high-definition audio. This was the nail in her coffin. I shifted my weight slightly, trying to get a better angle through the slats to take a photo of the man. My foot brushed against a plastic dry cleaning bag on the floor. It made a crinkling sound that seemed to echo like a gunshot in the silent house. Vanessa froze. What was that? The man stopped measuring. It came from the hall. They both turned toward the closet. My blood ran cold. I was trapped. I was an old man with a bad knee against a young woman and a man in his prime. If they found me now, they wouldn't call the doctor. They would finish the job themselves. I saw the man reach into his jacket. He pulled out a small silver pistol. A real estate agent with a gun. Of course. "Check the closet," Vanessa whispered, pointing a manicured finger at my hiding spot. I looked around frantically in the dark. I needed a distraction. I needed a miracle. My hand brushed against the shelf above me. My fingers closed around a small metal object. It was an old commemorative coin, a heavy silver dollar I had tossed in there years ago. The man was 5 feet away. I could see his shadow stretching under the door. I waited. My breathing stopped. Just as he reached for the handle, I flicked the heavy coin as hard as I could toward the opposite end of the closet. It hit the far wall with a loud clack, and then rolled across the wooden floorboards, hitting the vacuum cleaner stored in the corner. The sound came from the left side of the closet. The man spun toward the noise, ripping the left door open, his gun raised. It was empty, save for the vacuum and some old blankets. I was pressed into the far right corner, hidden behind the thick wool coats, holding my breath until my lungs burned. "It is nothing," the man said, lowering the gun. "Just settling pipes or a rat. This house is old, Vanessa. It makes noises." Vanessa let out a breath she had been holding. "I hate this place. It smells like old people and failure. Let's finish the valuation and get out of here. I want to be at the hotel before Bradley calls back." They walked back into the living room. I didn't move. I didn't exhale. I waited until I heard the front door open and close. I waited until I heard the car engine start and fade into the distance. Only then did I collapse onto the floor of the closet, shaking uncontrollably. I had the recording. I had the leverage. Vanessa thought she was the player. She thought she was the queen on the chessboard. She didn't realize she had just walked into the line of fire of a grandmaster. I climbed out of the closet. My legs were stiff, but my resolve was harder than diamond. I grabbed my passport. I grabbed the emergency cash. I walked to the kitchen. I saw a notepad on the counter where Vanessa had been writing figures. She had written down a flight number. American Airlines to Rio de Janeiro, Friday night. Friday, the same day as the competency hearing. She wasn't planning to stick around for the verdict. She was going to sell the house remotely, take the money, and fly while Bradley was sitting in court. I tore the page off the notepad and put it in my pocket. I walked out the back door into the night. The air was cold, but it felt clean. I looked back at my house one last time. They had tainted it. They had filled it with their lies and their greed. I couldn't live there anymore, not until I had scrubbed it clean. But first, I had a meeting to make. I walked to the nearest payphone. I didn't trust my cell signal anymore. I dialed a number that I knew by heart. Blackwood picked up on the first ring. "She is making a move," I said. "Who?" Blackwood asked, his voice gravelly with sleep. "Vanessa. She is double-crossing Bradley. She is selling the house to a cash buyer tomorrow and fleeing the country on Friday. And Blackwood, she forged Bradley's signature on the criminal documents. She is setting him up to take the fall for everything." There was a silence on the line, then a low, dark chuckle. "That is diabolical," Blackwood said. "I almost admire it." "I have it on tape," I said. "All of it," good Blackwood said. "But we need to move fast. If she sells that house to a cash buyer, the money will be gone before we can freeze it. We need to stop the sale." "No," I said, feeling a cold smile spread across my face. "We let her sell it." "Harry, are you crazy?" Blackwood asked. "That is your house." "Let her sell it," I repeated. "Let her sign the papers. Let her think she has the money. And then when she tries to transfer it, we trigger the trap. I want her to feel the victory, Blackwood. I want her to taste it. And then I want to rip it out of her throat." I could hear Blackwood smiling through the phone. "You are a scary man, Harry King." "I am a father," I said quietly, "and I am about to teach my children a very expensive lesson." I hung up the phone and disappeared into the shadows of the city. The game had changed. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about total annihilation. Vanessa wanted to play dirty. She was about to find out that when you play in the mud with a pig, the pig likes it. And I was done being clean. I walked for another 3 miles until the neon sign of the Blue Moon Motel flickered into view. It was a dive located on the edge of the industrial district where the city surrendered to rust and decay. The clerk was behind bulletproof glass and didn't even look up from his magazine when I slid 3 crumpled $20 bills through the slot. He tossed a key onto the counter. "Room 9 around the back." The room smelled of stale tobacco and cheap cleaner. The carpet was sticky and the curtains were torn, but it had a heavy deadbolt, and no one here knew my name. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress and took a moment to breathe. My knee was throbbing a dull, constant ache that reminded me I wasn't 30 anymore. I was a 72-year-old fugitive hiding in a roadside motel while my son sold my life out from under me. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket. My hands were steady. They had stopped shaking miles ago, replaced by a cold, mechanical focus. I dialed a number that I had memorized 20 years ago. It was a private line, a direct link to a man who didn't exist in the phone book. Arthur Blackwood. Most people knew Blackwood as the ruthless defense attorney who kept tech billionaires out of prison and made senators disappear from scandals. To the public, he was a shark in a $3,000 suit. To me, he was the man I saved from a federal indictment in '98 when I found the one accounting error that proved his innocence. He owed me his career. He owed me his life. And he was the only person on earth who knew the truth about the invisible empire I had built. The phone rang once, then a click. "This line is secure," a deep voice said. "No pleasantries. No hello." Blackwood never wasted words. "It is Harry," I said. There was a pause, a heavy silence that carried the weight of 2 decades of secrets. "Harry, I was wondering when you would call." My private investigator picked up chatter on the police scanner. An APB for a missing elderly male with dementia. Name Harold King. Dangerous. Do not approach. I let out a dry laugh. Dangerous. My son has a flair for the dramatic. "Where are you?" Harry Blackwood asked, his tone shifting from professional to urgent. "I am safe for now," I said. "But I need you to listen, Arthur. The situation has escalated. Bradley isn't just trying to steal the house. He has forged my signature. He has hired thugs, and Vanessa is orchestrating a double cross to flee the country with the assets." I have it all on tape, Good Blackwood said. Keep that tape. It is your insurance policy. But Harry, you do not know the half of it. I had my clerk check the court docket 10 minutes ago. They didn't just file a missing persons report. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What did they do? They filed an emergency ex parte motion for guardianship, Blackwood said. They found a judge, Judge Miller, who owes Bradley's lawyer a favor. They are claiming you are in the middle of a psychotic break. They submitted an affidavit stating you threatened violence against your granddaughter. I gripped the phone. Olivia. They were using Olivia. I had not spoken to that girl in months. It is a lie, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. It doesn't matter if it is a lie, Harry. It matters that it is on paper. They have an emergency hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you are not in that courtroom to contest it, the judge will grant Bradley temporary conservatorship by default. He will have legal control over your person and your property by lunchtime. I closed my eyes. Conservatorship. It was the ultimate weapon. It stripped a person of their civil rights. If Bradley got that order, he could legally drag me out of this motel, force me into a facility, and medicate me into oblivion. He could liquidate everything I owned, and I wouldn't be able to sign a check to stop him. And that brought us to the real problem, the secret that Blackwood guarded. They are going to find the portfolio, I said. Yes, Blackwood replied softly. Once they have conservatorship, they get full discovery of your assets. They will find the shell companies, Harry. They will find the blind trust. My son thought I was sitting on a $500,000 nest egg. He thought the house was the prize. He had no idea that in 1994 I bought 10,000 shares of a little online bookstore called Amazon. He didn't know about the Apple stock I picked up when everyone said the company was dead. He didn't know about the $15 million sitting in a diversified portfolio that I had earmarked for his children's future. If Bradley and Vanessa got their hands on $15 million, they wouldn't just pay off loan sharks. They would destroy themselves. They would burn through it in a year and leave a trail of wreckage behind them. I cannot let them have it, I said. Then you need to be in court tomorrow, Blackwood said firmly. I will meet you there. I will bring my team. We will fight this. We will show the judge the medical records. We will crush them, Harry. I stood up and paced the small room. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. A police cruiser rolled slowly past the motel. They were looking for me. Bradley had probably given them my description. No, I said. Harry, you have to. Blackwood argued. It is the only way. It is a trap, Arthur, I said. Don't you see? They want me to show up. They will have those thugs waiting in the parking lot, dressed as orderlies. They will have Dr. Thorne there with a sedative. I will never make it inside the courtroom. They will grab me claiming I am having an episode and drag me away before I can say a word. If I show up, I lose. Silence on the line. Blackwood knew I was right. He knew how these things worked. Then what do we do, he asked. We go nuclear, I said. I want you to trigger the Doomsday Protocol. I heard Blackwood inhale sharply. The Doomsday Protocol was a legal mechanism we had set up 10 years ago. It was a scorched earth strategy designed for a worst-case scenario. Harry, are you sure? Blackwood asked. Once I execute that trust transfer, there is no going back. The money leaves your control. It becomes irrevocable. You will be leaving yourself with nothing. I looked at my reflection in the cracked mirror. Gray hair, tired eyes, but a jaw set like granite. I don't need the money, Arthur. I never did. I kept it for them. I kept it because I thought one day they might grow up. I thought one day they might need a safety net. But you don't give a safety net to someone who pushes you off a cliff. Do it, I said. Who is the beneficiary? Blackwood asked, his voice low. The St. Jude's Home for Children, I said, and the Wounded Warrior Project. Split it 50-50. Transfer the entire portfolio. Liquidate the stocks. Move the cash tonight. By the time Bradley walks into that courtroom tomorrow, I want my net worth to be zero. I want him to win guardianship over a ghost. Understood, Blackwood said. I can hear him typing furiously in the background. I will have the papers drawn up within the hour. But Harry, if you transfer the assets while a competency hearing is pending, they will try to claw it back. They will argue you weren't in your right mind when you made the donation. That is why I need one more thing, I said. I need proof of my sanity, irrefutable proof, and I need proof of their conspiracy. I need to catch them in the act of fabricating evidence. What are you planning? Blackwood asked. I am going to pay a visit to Dr. Thorne, I said. Tonight. Harry, that is suicide, Blackwood warned. No, Arthur. It is an audit. And I have never failed an audit. I hung up the phone. I sat on the bed and opened the black ledger. I turned to the page where I had tracked Bradley's debts. The numbers were staggering. He wasn't just in debt, he was drowning. He had borrowed from everyone. Banks, friends, and people who break fingers for a living. He was desperate. And desperate men are dangerous. But they are also sloppy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the commemorative coin I had used to distract Vanessa. It was a heavy silver dollar. Liberty on one face and eagle on the other. I flipped it. It spun in the air, catching the flickering light of the television. Heads, I survive. Tails, I don't. I caught it and slapped it onto the back of my hand. I didn't look at it. It didn't matter. I wasn't leaving this to chance. I changed my clothes. I washed the grease off my face. I needed to look invisible. I put on a baseball cap I found left behind in the room's closet. It was dirty, but it covered my face. I walked out of the motel, leaving the key on the bed. I didn't check out. Let them think I was still there. I walked into the night toward the hospital district. I had a doctor to rob. I had a legacy to burn. And for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely terrifyingly alive. The money was gone. The house was gone. All that was left was the man. And the man was angry. I slipped through the delivery entrance of St. Jude's Medical Center. Just as the shift change whistle blew. Chaos is the best cover, and the loading dock was a symphony of shouting drivers and rattling carts. I spotted a laundry trolley left unattended near the service elevator. A gray jumpsuit hung off the handle. It was stained and 2 sizes too big, but it was perfect. I pulled it on over my suit and grabbed a mop bucket. I wasn't Harry King anymore. I was just part of the furniture, invisible. I took the service elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway was dim, lit only by the emergency track lighting. The air smelled of floor wax and latex. I pushed my bucket along the linoleum, keeping my head down. The sign on the frosted glass door read, Dr. Marcus Thorne, Geriatric Psychiatry, Private Consultations. I checked the corridor. Empty. I knelt by the lock. It was a standard 5-pin tumbler, not a high-security deadbolt. Thorne was arrogant. He thought his title was protection enough. I pulled the tension wrench from my pocket and slid it into the keyway. 20 seconds later, the lock clicked and the door swung inward with a soft sigh. I slipped inside and closed the door without a sound. The office was plush, mahogany desk, leather chairs, a view of the city skyline that cost more than my annual pension. It reeked of money and corruption. I didn't waste time. I went straight to the filing cabinet behind the desk. It was locked, but a swift kick to the bottom drawer hinge popped the mechanism. I thumbed through the folders. Smith, Jones, Kaling, King. I pulled the file. It was thick, too thick for a patient he had never met. I opened it and shone my penlight on the pages. My breath hissed through my teeth. Patient name Harold King. Date of exam October 14th. Diagnosis vascular dementia. Stage 4. Patient exhibits severe cognitive decline, aggressive outbursts and inability to perform activities of daily living. Patient is nonverbal and incontinent. Recommendation: immediate custodial care in a secure facility. I stared at the words. Incontinent. Nonverbal. They hadn't just exaggerated. They had erased me. They had turned a man who could still calculate compound interest in his head into a vegetable that needed harvesting. My hands shook, not from age, but from a fury so cold it burned. This wasn't medicine. It was murder with a pen. I slipped the papers into my jumpsuit. Now for the digital trail. I sat in his leather chair and woke the computer. A password prompt blinked on the screen. I didn't panic. I looked around the room. A forensic accountant knows that people are the weak link in any security system. Thorne was a narcissist. I looked at the framed photos on his credenza. Thorne on a golf course. Thorne shaking hands with the mayor. Thorne standing next to a sleek white sailboat named the Albatross. I typed Albatross. Access denied. I tried Albatross 1. Access denied. I tried Albatross 1 or 2, 3. Access granted. Men like Thorne never think anyone is smart enough to touch them. I navigated to his email client. I searched for Bradley King. The screen filled with a long list of correspondence. I opened the most recent one dated yesterday. Subject: the problem. Body. The old man is slippery, Bradley. If you can't bring him in physically, I can't sign the final committal order. The judge needs a body. But don't worry. If you bring him in unconscious, I can date the intake for yesterday. Just make sure he has the right cocktail in his system. I'll handle the toxicology report. I scrolled down. Subject: fee, body. My rate has gone up, 50,000 cash, up front. I know about the offshore accounts Vanessa is setting up. Don't think you can stiff me. I froze. Thorne knew about Vanessa's double-cross. He was playing both ends against the middle. This wasn't just a doctor, he was a blackmailer. I pulled the encrypted USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into the tower. I initiated a mirror copy of his entire email archive, his billing records, and his patient database. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 20%. I heard a heavy thud in the hallway. Footsteps, slow and rhythmic. Security, 40%. The footsteps stopped outside the door. I saw the shadow of feet under the frame. A flashlight beam swept under the gap. I held my breath. My hand hovered over the mouse. The doorknob rattled. Locked. I had locked it from the inside. "Housekeeping," a voice called out, muffled by the wood. I didn't answer. If I spoke, I risked giving myself away. I risked a confrontation I couldn't win physically. The radio crackled. "Yeah, 4th floor is clear. Just checking the perimeter." The footsteps moved on. 60%. I exhaled. I looked back at the screen. I needed to leave a mark. I needed Thorne to know that his world was about to burn. I opened his desktop settings. I changed the wallpaper. I typed 5 words in bold red letters across a black background. "I know what you did." 80%. I opened his calendar. I found the appointment for the hearing tomorrow morning, 9:00 a.m. Judge Miller. I added a note to the calendar entry. "See you there." 99%. Complete. I yanked the drive. I wiped the keyboard with my sleeve. I grabbed the mop bucket and the physical file. I opened the door a crack. The hall was empty. I moved fast. I didn't take the elevator this time. I took the stairs down 4 flights, my knee screaming with every step. I ditched the jumpsuit in the laundry chute on the 2nd floor. I walked out the side exit into the cool night air. Just another old man in a suit, leaving late after visiting a sick relative. I walked 2 blocks before I let myself stop. I leaned against a brick wall, clutching the briefcase that now held the destruction of 3 lives. I had the medical file. I had the emails. I had the proof of the conspiracy. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my burner phone. I had one more stop to make before the sun came up. I needed to make sure that when Bradley walked into that courtroom tomorrow, he wasn't just walking into a legal defeat. I wanted him to walk into a trap so absolute he wouldn't even realize he was dead until he stopped moving. I dialed Blackwood. "I have the files," I said. "Thorne is dirty. He is blackmailing them." "Good," Blackwood said. "I'll have a subpoena ready for his bank records by morning. Go get some sleep, Harry. You sound like you've gone 10 rounds. "I'm not tired," I said. And it was true. "I'm going to the bank." "The bank is closed, Harry." "Not the lobby, so," said. "The night deposit box. I have something I need to drop off for Vanessa." I hung up. I hailed a cab. "First National Bank," I told the driver, "and step on it." I sat back in the seat watching the city lights blur past. They thought I was a confused old man. They thought I was a victim. Tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m. they were going to find out that Harold King didn't get dementia. He got even. The sun was barely up over the city skyline, but my son looked like he had lived a lifetime in the last 8 hours. I sat in a corner booth at the Sunrise Diner directly across the street from the 4th Precinct. I had a clear line of sight through the grease-smeared window. I ordered black coffee and a plate of bacon. I needed the fuel. Today was not just a legal battle. It was a hunt. And the prey had just pulled up to the curb. Bradley's black sedan screeched to a halt in the loading zone. He stepped out, and he looked like a man on the edge of a nervous breakdown. His suit was rumpled. His tie was loose. He was pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, holding his phone to his ear with a white-knuckled grip. I didn't need a wiretap to know who was on the other end of the line. It was the thugs from the pub. The fake orderlies who had let a 72-year-old man slip through their fingers like smoke. I watched Bradley scream into the phone. He was gesturing wildly, kicking at the tire of his car. I could almost hear the conversation. They were telling him the bathroom was empty. They were telling him the window was broken. They were telling him that the package he paid $5,000 to secure was gone. He slammed the phone against the roof of his car. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at it. He was panicking. He owed $500,000 to violent men. He had a buyer for a house he didn't legally own coming in less than 24 hours. And now the one thing he needed to make it all work, the confused, compliant father, was missing. A moment later, Vanessa's white SUV pulled up behind him. She stepped out, looking immaculate in a cream-colored power suit and oversized sunglasses. She didn't look tired. She looked dangerous. She marched up to Bradley and slapped his arm hard. She was barking orders. I saw her point at the police station doors. She wasn't panicking. She was pivoting. File the report, she was saying. Control the narrative. If they couldn't commit me, they would report me missing. They would tell the police I was a danger to myself. They would get an APB issued so that any cop who saw me would drag me to the nearest psych ward. It was a smart play. It was their only play. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter and hot. I watched them walk up the steps of the precinct. Suddenly, they transformed. Bradley's shoulders slumped. He buried his face in his hands. Vanessa wrapped a supportive arm around his waist. In the span of 10 seconds, they went from conspirators to a devastated family, terrified for their lost patriarch. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. They were inside for 30 minutes. I ate my bacon slowly. I checked my burner phone. I had one more card to play before the hearing. I needed to isolate Bradley. I needed to make him feel like the walls were closing in, not just from the law, but from inside his own house. When they emerged from the station, they were accompanied by a young officer. Bradley was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. The officer was nodding sympathetically, probably promising to put my photo on every patrol car dashboard in the city. They shook hands. The officer went back inside. The moment the door closed, the masks fell. Bradley leaned against the brick wall, hyperventilating. Vanessa checked her watch, looking annoyed. She said something sharp to him and walked toward her car, leaving him alone on the sidewalk. She was probably heading to the bank to check on the transfer I had blocked, or to the airport to confirm her flight to Rio. She was cutting him loose. Bradley stood there fumbling for a cigarette. His hands were shaking so bad he couldn't get the lighter to work. He looked small, pathetic. I pulled out my phone. During my investigation into the company embezzlement, I had uncovered more than just financial rot. I had found the personal filth, too. Bradley had been seeing his secretary Monica for 2 years. He thought he was discreet. He used a company credit card for their hotel rooms. Amateur. I scrolled through my gallery until I found it. A photo taken 3 months ago. Bradley and Monica at a seaside restaurant. He was leaning across the table, kissing her. It was high resolution. Undeniable. I attached the photo to a text message. I didn't add any words. The picture spoke loud enough. I hit send. I watched through the diner window. Across the street, Bradley's phone buzzed in his hand. He looked down at the screen. He froze. For a long moment, he didn't move. He just stared at the device in his hand. Then his head snapped up. He looked left. He looked right. He scanned the street, his eyes wide with a feral terror. He wasn't looking for the police. He was looking for the eyes that were watching him. He looked directly at the diner. I didn't duck. I just raised my coffee mug in a silent toast. I was wearing the baseball cap and sitting in the shadows, so I knew he couldn't see my face clearly. He couldn't be sure it was me, but he knew someone was there. Someone knew his secrets. His phone buzzed again. I sent a second message. This one had text. She knows about the money, Bradley. Does she know about Monica? Bradley dropped the cigarette. He scrambled for his car keys, almost dropping them in the gutter. He tore open the door of his sedan and threw himself inside. He peeled away from the curb, cutting off a delivery truck tires, screeching. He was running, but he didn't know who he was running from. Was it his father? Was it a blackmailer? Was it Vanessa finding out about the affair? I signaled the waitress for the check. "Keep the change," I said, leaving a 20. The first crack had appeared in the foundation. Bradley was paranoid. He wouldn't trust Vanessa now. He would wonder if she sent the photo to leverage him. He would wonder if Monica had betrayed him. His focus was shattered. I walked out of the diner and blended into the morning crowd. The police were looking for a confused old man in a cardigan. They weren't looking for a man in a 3-piece suit with a briefcase full of evidence. I had 24 hours until the hearing. Bradley was terrified. Vanessa was arrogant. And I was just getting started. I hailed a cab. It was time to go to the one place they wouldn't expect me to be. The Lion's Den. I had a meeting with the only person in this city who hated my son as much as I did. His bookie. I sat in the rental car across the street from the First National Bank branch and watched the clock on the dashboard tick toward 10 a.m. This was the moment the trap would snap shut. I knew Vanessa's routine. She was methodical in her greed. Every morning at 10, she checked the accounts, moving money between shell companies and paying off the minimums on her secret credit cards. But today was different. Today she was trying to liquidate my life to fund her escape to Rio. I watched her white SUV pull into the lot. She didn't park in a space, she pulled right up to the curb in the fire lane. She stepped out wearing huge sunglasses and carrying a designer bag that probably cost more than my first car. She looked confident. She looked like a woman who had already won. She had no idea that 10 minutes ago, Jim Henderson, the branch manager, had personally flagged every single account linked to my social security number. I picked up my burner phone and dialed Jim's direct line. He answered on the first ring. "She is walking in," I said. I see her, Harry, Jim replied, his voice calm. I am ready. Do you want to listen in? Yes. Jim put the phone on the desk, leaving the line open. I heard the heavy glass doors of the bank swoosh open. I heard the click of Vanessa's heels on the marble floor. I could picture it perfectly. She would walk straight to the teller, bypass the line, and demand a cashier's check. I would like to close out the savings account, the female voice said. It was Vanessa. Her tone was sharp, imperious. The voice of a woman used to getting her way. Harold King. I have his debit card and the PIN. There was a pause. The sound of typing. Then the teller's voice, hesitant and polite. I am sorry, ma'am. This card has been declined. Try it again, Vanessa snapped. There is over $50,000 in that account. I tried it twice, the teller said. The system says the account is frozen. You will need to speak to the manager. I heard Vanessa huff a sound of pure irritation. Fine. Get him, now. A moment later, I heard Jim's footsteps approaching. Mrs. King, he said smoothly, please come into my office. I sat in my car, leaning back against the headrest, closing my eyes to focus on the audio. This was the pivot point. If Jim played this right, Vanessa wouldn't suspect me. She would suspect the only other person who knew about the money. What is the meaning of this? Vanessa demanded the moment the office door closed. I have a flight to catch. I need that money transferred to my holding company immediately. My father-in-law is incapacitated, and I am handling his affairs. I am afraid that is not possible, Mrs. King, Jim said. His voice was cool, professional steel wrapped in velvet. At 9:05 this morning, the account holder initiated a code-red security lockdown. Oh, what? Vanessa asked, her voice rising. A code red. It is a protocol for high-net-worth clients who suspect their identity has been compromised or their assets are under threat of theft. It freezes everything. Wire transfers, withdrawals, even automatic payments. The assets are locked down tight. Vanessa laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. That is ridiculous. Harold is senile. He doesn't even know what a code red is. He probably forgot his PIN code and triggered it by accident. Just override it, Jim. You know me. I cannot override it, Jim said. That is the point of the protocol. It requires biometric verification to lift. The account holder has to appear in person with a thumbprint and a retinal scan at our downtown headquarters, or he has to provide a specific voice authorization code that changes every hour. Vanessa went silent. I could hear her breathing quick, shallow breaths. She was processing this. She knew I wasn't at the headquarters. She knew I was supposedly missing, wandering the streets or hiding in a gutter. So how could I have locked the account? Someone else must have done it, she hissed. Bradley. Jim stayed silent, letting the paranoia take root. My husband, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Bradley King. Does he have access to this account? Mr. King is listed as a secondary contact. Jim lied smoothly. He called this morning inquiring about the balance. He didn't have the codes to withdraw, but he did have enough information to flag the account for suspicious activity. He said he was worried a third party might try to drain it. Bingo. I opened my eyes and watched the bank entrance. You are lying, Vanessa screamed. She lost her composure completely. He is trying to cut me out. That bastard. He knew I was leaving. He knew. Mrs. King. I am going to have to ask you to lower your voice or I will call security, Jim said. Vanessa slammed her hand on the desk. Keep your damn money. I will deal with this myself. I heard the door slam. I hung up the phone. A minute later, Vanessa burst out of the bank. She looked deranged. Her hair was messy, her sunglasses were askew. She was marching toward her car, fumbling for her phone. She wasn't calling me. She wasn't calling the police. She was calling Bradley. She thought Bradley had beaten her to the punch. She thought he had discovered her plan to flee to Rio and had locked the money down to keep it for himself to pay off his loan sharks. It was perfect. The alliance was shattered. They were no longer partners in crime. They were two scorpions in a bottle, and I had just shaken it. But I wasn't done. Paranoia is a slow poison. I needed to accelerate it. I needed Vanessa to realize that Bradley wasn't just greedy, he was a liability that was going to drag her down to the bottom of the ocean. I pulled the black ledger from my briefcase on the passenger seat. I turned to the tab marked Gambling Debts. I snapped a photo of the most recent page. It showed a list of wire transfers Bradley had made to a shell company in Nevis. The company belonged to a bookie named Sal the Butcher Moretti. The total for the last 3 months was $120,000. And next to the total, I had written a note in red ink based on a voicemail I had intercepted. Deadline Friday, collateral the house, consequence hospitalization. Bradley wasn't just broke. He was a dead man walking. And if Vanessa stayed married to him, his debts would become her problem, especially since she had forged her name on some of the loan documents. I typed a message to Vanessa using a spoofed number that would show up as unknown. He isn't locking the money to save the family, Vanessa. He owes Moretti $120K by Friday. He is going to give him the house money and the retirement cash. You get nothing. You go to Rio broke. I attached the photo of the ledger page. I hit send. I watched her in her car. She was screaming into her phone, presumably leaving a hateful voicemail for Bradley. Then she stopped. Her phone pinged. She looked at the screen. Even from across the street, I could see the color drain from her face. She slumped back against the driver's seat. She dropped the phone into her lap. She sat there for a long time, staring through the windshield. She was doing the math. She realized that even if they sold the house, even if they committed me, Bradley's debt was a black hole that would swallow every penny. There was no profit. There was only survival, and Bradley had hidden it from her. She started the car and peeled out of the lot, tires screeching. She wasn't going home. She was going to find him. I put the car in gear. My work here was done. The enemy was divided. Vanessa would now spend the next 24 hours tearing Bradley apart, looking for money that didn't exist, trying to save her own skin. She wouldn't be focusing on the competency hearing. She wouldn't be focusing on me. I drove toward the industrial park. I had one more stop, one more loose end to tie up before the grand finale. I needed to make sure that when the dust settled, there was absolutely no doubt about who the villain was. I needed to retrieve the backup tapes from my old office, because while the ledger proved the gambling, the tapes proved the embezzlement. I was tired. My bones ached. But a strange energy was coursing through me. For years, I had felt invisible, like a piece of furniture in my children's lives. Now I was the puppet master. I was pulling the strings and watching them dance. I checked my watch. 11 a.m., 22 hours until the hearing. I wondered if Bradley was enjoying his morning. I wondered if he knew that his wife was currently hunting him down with blood in her eyes. I merged onto the highway. The city skyline rose ahead of me, gray and imposing. Somewhere in one of those towers, Bradley was sitting in his office thinking he had won. He thought he had outsmarted the old man. He was about to learn that you never bet against the house, especially when the house built the game. I sat on a park bench 3 blocks from Bradley's office, watching the entrance through a pair of cheap binoculars I had bought at a surplus store. It was noon. The sun was high, but the air was cold. My son stumbled out of the revolving doors. He looked like a man who had been awake for a week. His tie was gone. His collar was unbuttoned. He was checking his phone every 5 seconds, twitching like a junkie looking for a fix. He was waiting for Vanessa to call him back. He was waiting for the thugs to tell him they found me. He was waiting for the world to stop spinning. It was time to make it spin faster. I pulled out the burner phone. I had already planted the seed of infidelity. I had planted the seed of financial betrayal. Now I needed to plant the seed of direct extortion. Bradley was not a criminal mastermind. He was a corner-cutting executive who thought he could buy his way out of trouble. When a man like that gets cornered, he doesn't fight. He pays. I typed the message slowly, ensuring every word was a hook. I know what you did outside the Rusty Anchor. I know where you tried to push the old man. I have a video of you talking to the orderlies. $100,000 cash. Tonight at 8. The old scrapyard on Industrial Boulevard. Come alone or I send the video to the cops. I hit send. Through the binoculars, I saw Bradley stop dead on the sidewalk. He read the message. He staggered back against the glass wall of the building. He looked around wildly. He didn't think it was me. He thought I was a confused old man wandering the streets. No, his mind went straight to the only people who knew about the Rusty Anchor. The thugs. He thought his hired muscle was double-crossing him. It made perfect sense. They lost the target, so now they were squeezing the client. I watched him dial a number furiously. He was probably calling them screaming threats, but they wouldn't know what he was talking about. They would get angry. They would threaten him back. The confusion would be absolute. He ran to his car. He was going to the bank. He was going to try to scrape together the cash. But he couldn't. I had locked the accounts. Vanessa had taken the rest. He was going to have to go to his loan shark, or worse, dip into the company funds again. He was going to make a mistake. I spent the afternoon preparing the stage. The scrapyard on Industrial Boulevard was a graveyard of rusted metal and abandoned dreams. It was isolated, dark, and perfectly ominous. It was also a known hotspot for local drug distribution. The police monitored it. They just needed a reason to look closer. At 7:30 p.m., I positioned myself on the roof of a derelict warehouse overlooking the yard. I had a clear view of the main gate. The wind howled through the piles of crushed cars. It was a desolate place, the kind of place where bad things happened to desperate men. At 7:55, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness. Bradley's black sedan rolled slowly through the gates. He parked near the car crusher, leaving the engine running. He stepped out. He was holding a gym bag. It looked light. Too light to hold $100,000. He probably had cut up newspaper or a few $1,000 he managed to pawn from his watch. He was bluffing. He stood there shivering in the cold, looking into the shadows. "I'm here," he shouted. His voice cracked. "I have the money. Come out." I didn't come out. I picked up my burner phone and dialed 911. "Emergency," the operator said. "I want to report a drug deal in progress," I said, adopting a frantic, whispered tone. "At the old scrapyard on Industrial. There is a man in a black luxury sedan. He has a bag full of cash and he is waiting for the supplier. He looks armed. Please hurry. I think someone is going to get hurt." "What is your name, sir?" "I'm just a neighbor," I said. "I don't want trouble." I hung up and popped the battery out of the phone, tossing it into a gutter. I watched Bradley. He was checking his watch. He was pacing. "Hello!" he screamed at the piles of scrap metal. "Do you want the money or not?" He had no idea he was talking to a ghost. He had no idea that the only person listening was the father he tried to erase. 5 minutes later, the night exploded. Blue and red lights flooded the scrapyard. Sirens wailed, echoing off the metal walls. 3 police cruisers drifted through the gate tires, kicking up gravel. "Police!" a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Put your hands in the air. Do it now." Bradley froze. He looked at the police cars, then at the gym bag in his hand. For a second, I thought he might run. I thought he might try to get back in the car. But Bradley was a coward. He dropped the bag and threw his hands up, screaming, "Don't shoot! I'm a victim! I'm being blackmailed!" Officers swarmed him. They kicked his legs apart and slammed him against the hood of his car. They cuffed him. "I didn't do anything," Bradley wailed. "I'm Bradley King. I'm an executive. This is a mistake. "We got a call about a drug deal," an officer shouted, patting him down. "Where is the product?" "There are no drugs," Bradley yelled. "It's money I was paying a ransom." Another officer opened the gym bag. He dumped it out on the hood. It wasn't money. It was stacks of printer paper cut to size with a single $100 bill on top. "Counterfeit notes?" the officer asked. "Or just fraud?" "It's a decoy," Bradley sobbed. "Please, you have to listen to me." "Check the car," the sergeant ordered. This was the moment. This was the payoff. I watched as they opened the trunk. They tossed aside his golf clubs. They pulled up the floor mat. And then the officer stopped. He reached in and pulled out a black medical bag. He unzipped it on the trunk lid. He pulled out a box of vials, sedatives, high-grade illegal tranquilizers, and next to them, a coil of heavy-duty industrial zip ties and a roll of duct tape. The atmosphere shifted instantly. This wasn't a drug bust anymore. This was a kidnapping kit. The sergeant walked over to Bradley holding the zip ties in front of his face. "You want to tell me what these are for, Mr. King?" Bradley's face went white. He couldn't speak. He couldn't say, "I was going to use those on my father." He couldn't say, "The doctor gave them to me." I don't know how those got there," he stammered. "Sedatives," the sergeant said. "Restraints. A bag full of fake money. You look like you were planning to grab someone." "No," Bradley screamed. "I'm the victim. My father is missing." "Is that right?" the sergeant said. "Maybe we should ask him about these zip ties if we find him. Or maybe we won't find him. Maybe you already used them." They dragged him to the cruiser. He was kicking and screaming, begging for a lawyer, begging for Vanessa, begging for his daddy. I watched them shove him into the back seat. I watched the lights fade as they drove away. My son was going to spend the next 24 hours in a holding cell. He would be processed. He would be fingerprinted. He would be stripped of his suit and put in a cage. He would have to explain the sedatives. He would have to explain the cash. And while he was doing that, he would miss the deadline with the loan shark. He would miss the real estate sale. He was safe from the loan sharks for tonight, but he was in a hell of his own making. I climbed down from the roof. My joints ached, but I felt lighter than air. I walked out of the scrapyard whistling a tune I hadn't thought of in years. I had taken his freedom. I had taken his dignity, but I wasn't done. I still had to take his future. I walked to the main road. I needed to get back to the city. I needed to get a good night's sleep, because tomorrow was the hearing, and Bradley wasn't going to be there to defend himself. But I would be. And I had one final performance to give before the curtain fell. I checked my watch. 9:00 p.m. Vanessa would be at home waiting for Bradley to call, waiting to hear if he got the money. She didn't know he was in a cell. She didn't know the police had the kidnapping kit. I decided to send her one last text, just to help her sleep. He didn't show up, Vanessa. He took the cash and left. He's probably halfway to Vegas. You're on your own. I threw the burner phone into a sewer grate. Let her stew. Let her panic. Let her turn on him completely. By tomorrow morning, there wouldn't be a King family left. There would just be 3 rats fighting over a sinking ship, and I would be the captain watching from the lifeboat. Bradley walked out of the police station at noon, looking like a man who had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had laughed at him. He smelled of stale sweat and holding cell disinfectant. He had spent 24 hours trying to explain why a respected executive was carrying a kidnapping kit in his trunk. He had lawyered it up, and they had to cut him loose pending further investigation, but the damage was done. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Vanessa was waiting for him at the curb in her white SUV. She didn't hug him. She didn't ask if he was okay. She unlocked the doors and stared straight ahead as he climbed in. I watched from the window of a coffee shop down the block. I saw them arguing. It was violent and silent behind the glass. Vanessa was slamming her hand against the steering wheel. Bradley was pleading. They were cornered rats, and cornered rats do illogical things. They didn't go home. They didn't go to the bank. They drove straight to the Grand Hotel downtown. I followed them. I sat in the lobby behind a newspaper and watched my son and his wife book the Crystal Ballroom for an emergency event the next evening. I listened as Vanessa charmed the events manager, claiming it was a charity gala, a fundraiser to help find their missing beloved patriarch. She was crying on cue, wiping dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. It was a performance that made my stomach turn. I called Blackwood. "They are hosting a party," I said. "I know," Blackwood replied. "The press release just hit the wire. The search for Harry King, a gala for awareness. They are inviting every business partner you ever had, Harry. They are inviting the local press. They are charging $500 a plate." I laughed. It was a cold sound. They are charging people to look for the man they tried to bury. It is not just a fundraiser, Harry, Blackwood warned. "My sources tell me Bradley called an emergency board meeting for your old company, King Logistics, to take place during the gala. He is going to present a power of attorney document. He is going to claim that due to your disappearance and mental state, he needs immediate control of the company assets to fund the search. He is going to liquidate the company, Harry. He is going to sell it to a competitor for pennies on the dollar, just to get the cash to pay off the loan sharks." So that was the play. The house sale was stalled, so they were going for the legacy. They were going to burn down the business I built over 40 years just to survive the week. "Let them," I said. "Harry, if he sells the company, the employees lose their jobs," Blackwood said. "The pension fund gets raided." "He won't sell it," I said, "because he won't be in charge. Get me a ticket to that gala, Arthur, and make sure the police are on standby." I went back to the motel. It was the last night I would spend in that dump. I looked around the room at the peeling wallpaper and the stained carpet. For 10 years I had played the part. I had hunched my shoulders. I had shuffled my feet. I had worn sweaters that smelled of mothballs and acted like I couldn't remember what day it was. I did it because I wanted to be loved. I wanted them to care for me, not my money. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the harsh fluorescent light. The man in the mirror looked tired. He looked weak. He looked like a victim. I opened my bag. I took out a straight razor and a bowl of shaving soap. I lathered my face, covering the gray stubble that I had let grow wild to enhance the image of the kindly grandfather. I pulled the skin tight. The razor scraped against my cheek. Stroke by stroke, I peeled away the mask. I shaved off the uncertainty. I shaved off the weakness. I cut my hair, trimming the shaggy gray locks into a sharp military-style cut. I washed my face with ice-cold water. When I looked up, the old man was gone. Staring back at me was the auditor, the man who had walked into boardrooms and told billionaires they were going to prison. The eyes were sharp. The jaw was set. I went to the closet and unzipped the garment bag Blackwood had dropped off. Inside was a suit I hadn't worn in a decade, an Armani charcoal 3-piece tailored in Milan. It smelled of cedar and power. I put on the crisp white shirt, fastening the pearl buttons. I slid into the trousers. I tied the silk tie in a perfect Windsor knot. I put on the jacket. It still fit. It fit like armor. I slipped the gold cufflinks into place. I put the Patek Philippe watch on my wrist. I polished my black Oxfords until they gleamed like obsidian. I picked up the black ledger. I picked up the USB drive. I was not going to that party to be found. I was not going to that party to beg for my life. I was going to that party to drop the hammer. My son wanted a spectacle. He wanted the press. He wanted the attention of the city. He was going to get it. I checked my reflection one last time. There was no trace of the confused retiree. There was only cold, hard justice. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the sun to rise. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I visualized every moment of the next 24 hours. I visualized the look on Vanessa's face when the house of cards collapsed. I visualized the terror in Bradley's eyes when he realized the checkmate was unavoidable. The phone rang. It was Blackwood. "The stage is set," he said. "The press is confirmed. The partners are attending. Bradley thinks he has won. He thinks you are dead in a ditch somewhere." "Good," I said. "Let him think it. Let him climb all the way to the top of the mountain. The fall will be that much longer." I hung up. I walked out of the motel room, leaving the door wide open. I didn't look back. The old Harry King was dead. He died the moment his son handed him a poisoned beer. The man walking toward the sunrise was something else entirely, and he was coming for blood. The crystal ballroom of the Grand Hotel smelled of expensive perfume lilies and deceit. It was a suffocating scent, the kind that masks the rot underneath. I stood in the shadows of the mezzanine balcony looking down at the spectacle my son had purchased with my money. There were 300 guests below, business partners I had known for 40 years, local politicians, reporters from the city paper hungry for a tragedy. They sat at round tables draped in white linen, eating filet mignon and drinking champagne that cost $200 a bottle. They had paid $500 a plate to attend a gala for a missing man. It was a wake for the living, and my son was the master of ceremonies. The stage was set like a shrine. A massive projection screen displayed a slideshow of photos. There was me fishing with Bradley when he was 10, me shaking hands with the mayor in the 90s, me smiling at a company picnic. They were grainy, blown-up images selected to tug at heartstrings. They made me look frail. They made me look like a ghost that had already passed on. A single spotlight illuminated the podium where Bradley stood. He looked impeccable from a distance. The makeup artist had covered the bags under his eyes. His suit was pressed. But through my binoculars I saw the truth. He was sweating. His hands gripped the sides of the podium so hard his knuckles were white. He was a man holding onto a cliff edge by his fingernails. Vanessa stood a few feet behind him. She was wearing a modest black dress, a calculated choice to suggest mourning without technically admitting I was dead. She dabbed at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief every time a camera flashed. She played the part of the devastated daughter-in-law perfectly. But I saw her eyes darting around the room, checking the exits, checking her watch, checking her phone. She was calculating the minutes until she could get on that plane to Rio. She thought she was hours away from freedom. The room fell silent as Bradley leaned into the microphone. He took a shaky breath. It was a good performance. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice cracking just the right amount. "It means the world to us to see so much support during this nightmare. As you know, it has been 48 hours since my father, Harold King, wandered away from his home." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. I saw my old business partner, George, shake his head sadly. "They bought it. They all bought it. We have searched everywhere," Bradley continued, wiping a tear that wasn't there. "The police are doing their best. But the doctors have told us that given his advanced state of dementia, given his confusion, the outlook is grim. He doesn't know who he is anymore. He doesn't know where he is. He is a danger to himself." I felt a cold fire burning in my chest. He was stripping me of my dignity in front of the people I respected most. He was painting me as a husk, a broken shell of a man, just to justify his theft. "We are praying for a miracle," Bradley said. "But we must also be realistic. My father built King Logistics from nothing. He poured his life into that company, and he would never want his personal tragedy to destroy his legacy. He would want the business to survive." Here it comes, the pivot, the moment the grief turned into greed. Bradley straightened up. His voice became stronger, more authoritative. "However, the uncertainty of his disappearance has caused instability in the market. Our stock is fluctuating. Our creditors are nervous. And because my father is incapacitated because he is legally unable to make decisions, I have been forced to take a difficult step. He reached under the podium and pulled out a leather folder. I have here a power of attorney document, Bradley announced, holding it up for the cameras. It grants me full emergency control over King Logistics and the King Family Trust. It is a burden I never wanted. It is a responsibility I take with a heavy heart. But I must do this to save the company. I must liquidate certain assets to ensure we have the liquidity to fund the search and protect our employees. He was lying to their faces. He wasn't going to protect employees. He was going to sell the fleet. He was going to raid the pension fund. He was going to burn 40 years of my work to pay off a gambling debt in a scrapyard. And tonight I am announcing that we have entered into a preliminary agreement to sell the logistics division to our competitor, Global Trans. The room gasped. Global Trans was the enemy. I had fought them for decades. Selling to them was the ultimate betrayal. It is what my father would have wanted, Bradley lied smoothly. To secure the future. He opened the folder. He pulled out a gold pen. So, with your witness, I am signing the transfer of authority. I am taking the helm. He lowered the pen to the paper. The cameras flashed blindingly. Vanessa stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder, her eyes gleaming with triumph. They thought they had done it. They thought they had crossed the finish line. I pressed the button on the remote control in my pocket. It wasn't a bomb. It was better. Instantly, the crystal ballroom plunged into absolute darkness. The chandeliers died. The stage lights cut out. The projector screen went black. For a second, there was total silence. Then the murmur of confusion started rising to a panic. People were gasping, reaching for their phones to use as flashlights. What is happening? Bradley's voice boomed over the speakers, amplified in the dark. Is it a power outage? Get the lights back on. Stay calm, everyone. Vanessa shouted, her voice shrill. It is just a technical glitch. I smiled in the darkness. I brought the microphone of the PA system to my lips. I had bribed the sound technician $500 to take a coffee break 10 minutes ago. I was alone in the booth. I flipped the switch. Are you looking for me, son? My voice thundered through the ballroom. It wasn't the voice of a confused old man. It was deep, resonant, and cold as the grave. It echoed off the walls, bouncing around the terrified crowd. Below me, I saw the beams of cell phone flashlights swinging wildly toward the stage. Bradley had frozen. He was gripping the podium, looking up into the void. Dad, he whispered. The microphone picked it up. You told them I was lost, I said, my voice filling every corner of the room. You told them I was senile. You told them I didn't know who I was. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful. But I know exactly who I am, Bradley. And more importantly, I know what you are. The crowd was dead silent now. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. This wasn't a technical glitch. This was a haunting. Who is doing this? Vanessa screamed. Cut the mic! Someone cut the mic! You wanted to sell my company, I said. You wanted to sell my house. You paid two men $5,000 to drag me out of a bar and inject me with sedatives so you could steal my life. A collective gasp went through the room. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and toxic. That is a lie, Bradley shouted into the dark. My father is sick. This is a prank. Whoever is doing this, I will have you arrested. Oh, you will definitely be arrested, son, I said. But not for a prank. I hit the second button on the console. The massive projector screen behind the stage flickered to life. But it wasn't showing photos of me fishing anymore. It was showing a grainy video footage time-stamped 2 days ago. It was the footage from the security camera I had hacked in the alley behind the rusty anchor. The video showed Bradley pacing by the dumpster. It showed the two thugs in white scrubs. It showed Bradley handing them a thick envelope of cash. And then the audio kicked in loud and clear. Make sure he doesn't wake up until Friday, Bradley's voice said on the video. I need him declared incompetent. The ballroom erupted. People were screaming. Reporters were shouting questions. I hit the next button. The image changed. Now it was a photo of the Black Ledger. A page detailing the wire transfers to the bookie Sal Moretti. $120,000. And then another image. The email from Dr. Thorne agreeing to forge the medical records for a fee. You didn't lose me, Bradley, I said. I ran away from you. Because a father shouldn't have to sleep with one eye open in his own house. Bradley was staggering back from the podium as if the images on the screen were physical blows. Vanessa had backed away from him, trying to put distance between herself and the man she had conspired with. But I wasn't done with her. I switched the image again. This time it was the audio waveform of the recording I made from the closet. Vanessa's voice filled the room sharp and clear. We are taking the money and disappearing, Greg. Let the loan sharks break his legs. Let the old man rot in the asylum. The crowd turned toward Vanessa. She stood there under the ghostly light of the screen, her mouth open in a silent scream of denial. Her parents were in the front row. Her friends were at table 4. Everyone she had ever tried to impress was watching her soul get stripped bare. Lights, I commanded. I hit the master switch. The spotlights slammed back on, but they weren't aimed at the stage. They were aimed at the back of the room, at the mezzanine balcony where I stood. I stepped forward to the railing. I was wearing my charcoal Armani suit. My hair was cut sharp. My face was clean-shaven. I didn't look frail. I didn't look confused. I looked like a titan. Bradley squinted up at me, shielding his eyes from the glare. He looked like a child caught standing over a broken vase. Dad, he croaked. Hello, Bradley, I said. I heard you were throwing a party for me, so I decided to drop by. I looked down at the crowd. I looked at the board members who had been ready to sign over my legacy. I looked at the police officers who were now moving through the doors at the back of the hall, their hands on their holsters. I told you I would fix this, I said to the room, and the audit is finished. Bradley fell to his knees. He started to sob. It wasn't a performance this time. It was the sound of a man whose life had just ended. But I felt nothing. The part of me that was his father had died in that alleyway. The man on the balcony was just the executioner, and the sentence had been passed. I walked down the grand staircase from the mezzanine, my hand gliding over the velvet railing. The spotlight followed me, a cone of white brilliance that cut through the darkness of the ballroom. I did not use a cane. I did not stoop. I walked with the rhythm of a predator entering a clearing. My Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble steps, a sharp metronome sound that echoed in the terrified silence. 300 heads turned to watch my descent. These were people who had known me for decades. They had seen me build a logistics empire from a single truck. But for the last 10 years, they had only seen the mask I wore, the cardigans, the shuffling gait, the forgetfulness. They had bought into the narrative that Harold King was a fading star, a man whose mind was dissolving like sugar in hot water. Tonight, they were seeing the resurrection. I reached the bottom of the stairs and started walking down the center aisle toward the stage. The crowd parted instinctively. I saw George, the CEO of Global Trans, sitting at table 3. His mouth was open, his fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at me and then he looked at the contract lying on the table in front of him, the contract Bradley had almost tricked him into signing. George closed the folder and pushed it away. He knew. In that instant, he knew he had been played. I kept my eyes locked on the stage. Bradley was still gripping the podium, his knuckles white. He looked like a man waking up from a nightmare, only to realize he was still falling. He squinted against the glare, his brain frantically trying to process the impossible. His father, the senile old man he had tried to discard like broken furniture, was walking toward him, wearing a suit that cost more than Bradley's car. Then the salesman in him took over. The survival instinct that had kept him afloat through years of gambling and lies kicked in. "Dad," he stammered, his voice amplified by the microphone I had hijacked. "Dad, is that you?" He let go of the podium and rushed down the steps of the stage. He ran toward me, his arms wide open, his face twisting into a mask of overwhelming relief. It was a good performance. To the untrained eye, it looked like a son overjoyed to see his missing father. "Oh, thank God," Bradley shouted, tears magically appearing in his eyes. "We were so worried. We thought you were dead." But I saw the tension in his shoulders. I saw the way his eyes darted toward the security guards standing by the exits. He wasn't running to hug me. He was running to tackle me. He wanted to get his hands on me, to pin my arms, to whisper threats in my ear, to drag me out of the room before I could speak. He was going to claim I was having an episode. He was going to scream for a doctor. He was going to try to sedate me right there on the dance floor. He closed the distance between us fast. He was younger. He was bigger. He thought he could overpower me. I stopped walking. I planted my feet. I didn't raise my hands. I just looked at him with the cold, dead stare I used to reserve for embezzlers right before I handed them over to the feds. "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. I didn't need a microphone. I had the command presence of a man who owns the building. Bradley faltered, but he didn't stop. He lunged for me, his hands reaching for my shoulders. "Dad, please, you are confused. You need to sit down. Let me help you." He grabbed my lapels. His grip was hard, painful. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of scotch and fear. "Shut up, old man," he hissed so only I could hear. "Detailed and vicious. Shut up and get in the car or I will kill you myself." I didn't flinch. I didn't struggle. I reached up and clamped my hand over his wrist. I squeezed. I squeezed with the strength of a man who had spent 40 years lifting crates and moving steel. Bradley gasped. His eyes went wide. He tried to pull away, but I held him fast. I twisted his wrist, forcing him to his knees. He went down with a yelp of pain, landing on the plush carpet in front of me. The room gasped. I let him go and took a step back, brushing the invisible dust from my jacket. "I am not confused, Bradley," I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room, "and I do not need your help." Bradley looked up at me from the floor. He looked at the crowd. He saw the doubt creeping into their eyes. He scrambled to his feet, straightening his tie, trying to regain his dignity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, turning to the audience, his voice shaking, "please forgive my father. His condition, the dementia, it makes him violent. He doesn't know what he is doing. He has been missing for 2 days without his medication." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "He's having a psychotic break. We need medical assistance immediately. Dr. Thorne, please help him." Dr. Thorne stood up from table 1. He looked pale. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. He started to move toward me, reaching into his pocket for the sedative I knew he was carrying. I raised my hand and snapped my fingers. It was the signal. Blackwood was in the control booth. He hit the enter key. The massive screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the grainy photos of my past, flickered. The image changed. It was not a photo anymore. It was a video. High definition. Night vision. The room went silent. Dr. Thorne stopped in his tracks. Bradley turned around slowly, dread pulling his head toward the screen. The video showed a dirty alleyway. It showed dumpsters and wet pavement. It showed a black luxury sedan pulling up. Bradley King stepped out of the car in the video. He looked nervous, checking over his shoulder. 2 large men in white scrubs stepped out of the shadows. The audio boomed through the ballroom speakers, crisp and clear. "Where is the old man?" Bradley's voice on the video demanded. "You said you had him." "He went out the window," one of the thugs replied. "I paid you $5,000, Bradley screamed on the screen. I need him committed tonight. I need that signature. The Bradley in the ballroom covered his mouth with his hand. He took a step back. The video cut to a new angle. This one was from inside the car. Bradley was on the phone. Just grab him, he was shouting into his cell. I don't care if you have to break his legs. Just get him to Dr. Thorne. The doctor has the cocktail ready. We will turn his brain to mush and get the house sold by Friday. The video ended. The screen went black. A collective intake of breath sucked the air out of the room. It was the sound of 300 people realizing they were witnessing a crime. Bradley turned to the crowd, his hands held up in surrender. That is a fake, he screamed, his voice cracking. That is a deep fake, AI generated. My father hired someone to make that. He is sick. He is paranoid. Vanessa stepped forward, her face a mask of fury. This is ridiculous, she shouted. You are all going to believe a senile old man over your own eyes. He is manipulating you. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile. Is that so, Vanessa? I asked. I signaled the booth again. Audio only this time. The waveform appeared on the screen, spiking with the intensity of the voice. It was Vanessa's voice. Recorded from the closet in my hallway just 24 hours ago. We are taking the money and disappearing, Greg, she said, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Let the loan sharks break his legs. Let the old man rot in the asylum. I am done with the King family. I forged his signature on the doctor's retainer anyway. If the cops come looking, they will find his name on everything, not mine. Vanessa froze. She looked at Bradley. Bradley looked at her. The betrayal hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Bradley realized in that moment that his wife wasn't his partner. She was his executioner. He looked at her with pure hatred. You forged my signature, he whispered. Vanessa backed away, shaking her head. No. No, that is taken out of context. I stepped up to the microphone. I took it off the stand. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at my son and his wife. You told them I was lost, I said. My voice was calm, steady, the voice of a judge delivering a verdict. You told them I wandered away. You told them my mind was gone. I looked at the reporters in the back of the room. They were typing furiously on their laptops, recording every word. I didn't get lost, I said. I ran away. I climbed out of a bathroom window and ran down an alley because my own son tried to have me kidnapped and sedated in a pub. Bradley fell to his knees. He put his hands over his ears as if he could block out the truth. I looked at Dr. Thorne, who was trying to sneak toward the exit. And that man, I said, pointing at the doctor, helped him do it. For $50,000. Security, stop him, George shouted from table 3. 2 large security guards stepped in front of Dr. Thorne, blocking his path. He slumped against the wall, defeated. I looked back at Bradley. He was sobbing now. Snot and tears ruining his expensive suit. Why, he wailed. Why are you doing this? Because I am your father, I said. And a father teaches his children the difference between right and wrong. Even if he has to burn the whole house down to do it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the black ledger. I held it up for the cameras. This book contains the record of every dollar you stole from the company Bradley. It contains the wire transfers to the bookies. It contains the embezzlement. It contains the fraud. I tossed the book onto the stage. It landed with a heavy thud right in front of him. The audit is closed, I said. Sirens began to wail in the distance, getting closer. The police I had requested were arriving, but they weren't here to find a missing person. They were here to arrest a conspiracy. Bradley looked at the book. He looked at me. His eyes were empty. He knew it was over. He knew there was no talking his way out of this. The evidence was not just legal, it was social. I had destroyed him in front of everyone who mattered. I turned my back on him. I didn't want to see him beg. I walked back up the stairs to the mezzanine. I felt the eyes of the room on my back, but I didn't care. I was done performing. I walked to the exit where Jack was waiting. He held the door open for me. "You okay, boss?" he asked. I paused, looking back one last time at the chaos below. The police were bursting through the doors. Handcuffs were coming out. My legacy was in ruins, but my dignity was intact. "I am fine, Jack," I said. "Better than fine. I am awake." The silence that followed the video didn't last. It shattered like glass dropped on concrete. 300 people started talking at once. Chairs scraped against the floor as business partners stood up, backing away from the tables like the linen was contagious. The reporters in the back were practically climbing over each other to get a clear shot of the stage. The flashbulbs were blinding, a strobing lightning storm that illuminated the sweat pouring down Bradley's face. Then the doors at the back of the ballroom burst open again. This wasn't the hotel security. This was the police. 4 uniformed officers marched in, flanked by 2 detectives in cheap suits. Blackwood had timed it perfectly. They weren't just here to arrest. They were here to witness. Vanessa saw them coming. Her eyes went wide and feral. She realized the narrative was slipping away from her. She realized she was losing the crowd. She did the only thing a cornered narcissist knows how to do. She attacked. She grabbed the microphone stand, wrestling it away from Bradley. She pointed a shaking finger up at the mezzanine, her face twisted into a mask of ugly desperation. "He is lying!" she screamed, her voice cracking through the speakers. "He is sick. Can't you see that? He is having a breakdown. That video is fake. It is AI generated. He hired someone to make it because he is paranoid. He thinks everyone is out to get him." She turned to the front row, appealing to her parents, who looked like they wanted to dissolve into the floor. "Mom, Dad, tell them. Tell them he has been losing his mind for years. He forgets names. He gets lost. He is imagining a conspiracy because his brain is rotting." Bradley nodded frantically, trying to salvage the lie. "Yes. Yes, she is right. My father has delusions of persecution. This is a tragedy. Please, officers, you need to take him to the hospital, not listen to his ramblings." I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard over their hysteria. I reached into the inside pocket of my Armani jacket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was crisp. It was white. It was the only weapon I needed to silence her. I walked down the stairs again. The police stopped halfway down the aisle, watching me. They saw a man in control. They saw the auditor. I stepped onto the stage. Bradley flinched as if I were going to hit him. I walked past him and stood in front of Vanessa. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit that didn't exist. "You say I am paranoid, Vanessa." I said, my voice calm and steady without the microphone. "You say I am imagining drugs and conspiracies." I unfolded the paper and held it up. I turned it so the cameras could see. I turned it so the police could see. "This is a toxicology report from Central Hospital," I said. "I had my blood drawn at 8 a.m. this morning. It was analyzed by a forensic lab." I looked at Bradley. "It is clean, son. No dementia medication, no antipsychotics, and definitely no sedatives. My blood is pure. My mind is sharp." I took a step closer to him. "But if the police go down to the parking garage right now and open the trunk of your car, they won't find a spare tire. They will find a black medical bag. Inside that bag, they will find 3 vials of ketamine and a syringe. The same syringe you paid $5,000 to have used on me." Bradley's knees gave out. He grabbed the podium to stay upright. He couldn't speak. He couldn't deny it, because he knew it was true. He had been too terrified to dump the kit. He thought he might still need it. Vanessa tried to snatch the paper from my hand. I pulled it back. "You are lying," she shrieked. "You planted it. You are trying to frame us." I laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound. "Frame you." "Vanessa, I don't need to frame you. You painted your own portrait." I walked over to where the black ledger had landed on the stage. I bent down and picked it up. It was heavy in my hand. Years of ink, years of betrayal. I held the book up high. The leather cover caught the spotlight. "You want to talk about delusions?" I asked the room. "Let's talk about math. Because math doesn't have delusions. Math doesn't lie." I opened the book to a page marked with a red tab. Bradley told the board that King Logistics was struggling because of the market. He told you profits were down because of fuel costs. I looked at the board of directors sitting at table 1. Their faces were grim. He lied. The company is profitable. Or it would be if he hadn't been bleeding it dry. I pointed a finger at my son. $2 million, Bradley. $2 million in 5 years. The crowd gasped. It was a tangible sound, a wave of shock. I started reading from the ledger. August 14, 2019. $50,000 transferred to a shell company in Panama for consulting fees. The company is owned by a casino holding group. December 3, 2020. $75,000 billed as equipment maintenance. It went to a luxury car dealership in Miami. March 10, 2021. $100,000 withdrawn in cash. No receipt. That was the week you bought Vanessa her diamond earrings, wasn't it? I slammed the book shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I knew Bradley. I knew for a long time. I saw the discrepancies in the quarterly reports 5 years ago. I tracked every penny. I watched you steal from the pension fund. I watched you steal from the maintenance budget. Bradley was shaking his head, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, please stop." I waited, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. I waited for you to stop. I waited for you to come to me and say, "Dad, I am in trouble. Dad, I need help." I would have helped you. I would have paid the debts. I would have fixed it. I looked him in the eye. But you didn't come to me. You came for me. You decided it was easier to bury your father than to admit you were a failure. I turned to the police officers who were now moving onto the stage. "Officers," I said, handing them the ledger. "This book contains the evidence of grand larceny, embezzlement, and wire fraud. The video contains the evidence of conspiracy to commit kidnapping." I looked at Vanessa. "And the woman standing there has a one-way ticket to Rio in her purse purchased with money she stole from my retirement account yesterday morning. Check her bag." Vanessa clutched her purse to her chest. She looked like a trapped animal. The lead detective stepped onto the stage. He was a big man with a tired face. He looked at Bradley. He looked at Vanessa. "Bradley King," he said, pulling a pair of cuffs from his belt. "You are under arrest." Vanessa screamed. It was a high, piercing sound of pure rage. "Not at me. At Bradley. You idiot," she yelled, hitting him in the chest. "You told me he was stupid. You told me he didn't know anything. You ruined everything." The police separated them. They pulled Bradley's hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. I stood there alone in the spotlight. I watched them drag my son away. He was looking at me, his eyes begging for a mercy I didn't have left to give. I had won. I had exposed the truth. I had saved my life. But as I watched them lead him out past the tables of whispering guests, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a man who had just survived a car crash. I was alive, but I was standing in the wreckage of everything I had built. I looked at the crowd. They were staring at me with a mix of awe and fear. They knew now. They knew I wasn't the kindly old man. They knew I was the monster under the bed for people who tell lies. I straightened my tie. I buttoned my jacket. "The show is over," I said into the microphone. "Go home." I dropped the mic. It hit the floor with a thud. I walked off the stage, leaving the book of sins behind me. The officers hauled Bradley to his feet. He could barely stand. His legs were jelly, and his face was a ruin of tears and snot. He lunged toward me, straining against the handcuffs that bit into his wrists. "Dad, please," he screamed. "I am sorry. I was desperate. They were going to kill me. Please tell them to stop." I looked down at him from the edge of the stage. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt cold indifference, the way one looks at a stranger's ledger that doesn't balance. "You are not my son," I said, my voice flat and final. "My son died the moment you dropped a pill into my beer at the Rusty Anchor. You are just a man who owes a debt he can never pay." Bradley collapsed, sobbing into his chest as the officers dragged him backward. Next to him, Vanessa was fighting like a wildcat. She was shouting about her rights, about her lawyer, about how this was all a mistake. But then her eyes locked on table 4. Greg, the real estate agent in the shiny suit, was sitting there. He had been invited as a potential buyer for the company assets. He was frozen, his face pale as he tried to sink into his chair. "Greg, help me," Vanessa shrieked, desperate for anyone to save her. Tell them we were leaving. Tell them about Rio." The crowd turned to look at Greg. He stood up, knocking his chair over, and tried to run toward the side exit, but a detective stepped in his path. "I didn't know anything," Greg shouted, raising his hands. "She told me he was abusive. She told me she was single." The room gasped. The final secret was out. Vanessa wasn't just a thief. She was an adulterer who had played everyone. I watched as the police marched them both out through the service doors. The flashbulbs popped one last time, capturing their ruin for the morning papers. The ballroom was chaotic. People were shouting questions at me. The board members were trying to approach the stage, but I turned away. I was done with them. I was done with this life. I walked down the steps and headed for the main lobby. The doorman opened the heavy glass doors, and I stepped out into the cool night air. The city sounded different now, cleaner. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a taxi. It was a brand new luxury sedan with tinted windows. The window rolled down. Jack, the bartender, smiled at me from the driver's seat. "Nice suit, boss," he said. I opened the door and slid into the leather seat. It smelled of new car scent and victory. "Did it go well?" Jack asked, pulling away from the curb. "It went exactly according to plan," I said, loosening my tie. "They are in custody. The evidence is logged. The audit is complete." Jack nodded, watching the road. "So where to now?" "The airport. A beach somewhere." "No," I said, looking at the city lights reflecting off the river. "Take me to Blackwood's office." "Tonight?" Jack asked. "Tonight," I confirmed. "I have one last document to sign. I need to rewrite my will." Jack glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Who is the lucky beneficiary?" I looked at the young man who had grabbed my hand in a pub and saved my life when my own flesh and blood tried to end it. "The St. Jude's Home for Children gets half," I said. "And the other half goes to you, Jack." The car swerved slightly. Jack stared at me in the mirror, his eyes wide. "Me? Why me? I just poured you a beer, Harry." "You did more than that," I said, leaning back and closing my eyes. "You were the only person in this entire city who told me the truth. And loyalty, Jack, is the only currency that matters." Drive. We disappeared into the traffic, leaving the Grand Hotel and the ruins of the King family in the rearview mirror. I had lost a son, but I had found a future. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to live it. The most painful lesson I learned is that shared blood does not guarantee loyalty, and DNA does not define family. For years, I made myself small, hiding my strength and success, because I thought it was the only way to be loved. I was wrong. By playing the victim, I only invited the wolves into my home. True family are the people who stand by you when you have nothing to offer but yourself. I learned that kindness without boundaries is just self-destruction, and that it is never too late to rewrite your legacy. You are not defined by how others treat you, but by what you are willing to tolerate. I finally chose dignity over biology, and that choice set me free. If you believe that loyalty is thicker than blood, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories where justice is served cold. Let me know in the comments if you would have forgiven your son, or if you would have closed the ledger just like I did.